Hello and welcome to the Connected Leadership Podcast for a second attempt at going live with my guest Ruth Gotian today. I've deleted everything that went before, so if you go searching for it, hopefully you won't find it, because it was a complete car crash where everything went wrong. And of course, even though I'm someone who writes about vulnerability and saying when you don't quite know all of the answers, I'm still going to delete that off of my social media profiles as soon as I get the opportunity. But very brief intro now, because we're up against time a little bit more than I would have liked. On the first Monday of every month on the Connected Leadership Podcast, since its inception in September, I've been interviewing the Italian leadership strategist Luca Signoretti. Luca is staying in that role, but we are now job sharing. So Luca is going to join me on the first Monday of every other month. And on the other alternate months, I'm going to be joined by Dr. Ruth Gotian from Weill Cornell Medicine in New York, a regular Forbes contributor, Psychology Today contributor, an all-around brain and brilliant guest on a very early edition of the Connected Leadership Podcast. So what you're watching now is a live stream of that interview, which will then be broadcast on the first Monday in July. So if you are tuning in on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on YouTube, and you want to say hello, please do tell us where you're listening from. And if you have any questions, any comments on our topic, then please feel free to ask them. In the meantime, Ruth, can you see me? Can you hear me? Can I hear you? And are we ready to go?
I can see you. I can hear you. And you know what? We were not the car crash. We were here. We were on time.
Yeah.
We were here to do what we do. It's just the technology gods were just not in our favor today, but that's okay. We just pivoted and here we are ready to go.
And you're being very generous, considering I sent you a very late email with the link, forgetting to put the link in. So I have to put my hand up to that particular one, but never mind. We're here and we're ready to go.
But here we are.
Here we are. So the idea is that we're going to have a conversation. We're going to aim for around half an hour or so, given the time constraints on us. And that's typically what I aim for in this particular episode of the podcast. And we're going to pick a theme to chat about each time that we speak. Now, given your work with Forbes, I thought the one thing that we can do as we move forward is have a look at some of the topics you've covered in your Forbes column in the few weeks between interviews. But for today, I started looking through those and there are some great topics. But actually, one thing that struck me straight away is that a lot of your work is based on working with high achievers and looking at the success of high achievers. You also do a lot of work on mentoring, and it's a topic we've covered before, but I think we can revisit it at a certain time. But I thought a conversation about high achievers, how organizations can help their top talent achieve their potential, and perhaps something around how those high achievers can get the most out of the opportunities afforded to them would be the best way to introduce you once more to the Connected Leadership Podcast listeners. So let's start out by sitting in the seat of a leader in an organization who has a number of people within their division, within their organization as a whole, and they want to pick out that top talent, the people they can nurture and lead all the way to the top to be sitting around that boardroom table in a few years' time. How do they... what are the best metrics to identify those people, rather than simply putting the people with the best academic results into a fast stream program?
And Andy, I think that's such a critical question because high achievers produce 400% more than the average employee. So we need to really figure out who these people are and make sure that we are giving them the space and the resources to shine, because these are the people that when you figure out who they are and give them just enough structure that it's a framework, you got to leave them alone. You got to let them do their thing. Now, who are these high achievers? These are the people who are always questioning, what if we do this? How about we do that? They are looking for different ways. The phrase of we've always done it that way It's just not in their vocabulary. These are the people who do not like the status quo. They're always looking for ways to make things faster, more efficient, better, different. They're looking at things from every different angle. And they're not afraid to say, I don't know, but let me find out and talk to someone who does. So they're not just going to work in their little hole, they're actually going to talk to other people and collaborate. This is not about gossiping. This is my area of expertise. This is your area of expertise. Let's talk to each other and fill in that gap. And then they actually fill in the gap to produce something better. So those are the people you really want to look out for because, as I said, they are 400% more productive than your average employee. The problem is, too often, those are the ones who are completely ignored within an organization. We usually focus on, at best, the average or those who are below average. And many organizations, they do performance appraisals annually. And if you're average, they leave you alone. If you're above average, they leave you alone. If you're below average, they give you a whole performance development plan, right? That you can do with milestones that you need to hit. But what happens is the high achievers see that all the focus is going on the low achievers, and they're going to walk out the door, the high achievers. So the organization is going to be left with, at best, the average employees, at worst, the underachievers. So we really need to shift the way organizations are looking and rewarding and leading these high achievers. So I'm so excited we get to talk about it.
Well, there's this a couple of things I want to pick up on there. I think the first one, and the most resonant with me, given the work that I do, is your comment that the best high achievers are those that ask questions
Yeah.
and try and find out the gaps. Do you think that if we're talking about people who are in the earlier years of their career, so let's say they're post-grad, mid-20s through to mid-30s would probably be a sweet spot, I would think, for identifying those people, particularly in the earlier part of that growth. Do you think that there's a pressure, maybe a self-imposed pressure, on those high achievers to prove that they know the answers, that they're as good as their CV shows? And how do we get them to understand that it's okay to say, I don't know?
So, Andy, I study extreme high achievers. I study astronauts and Olympic champions and Nobel laureates. And the reason they have become so successful is because they have mastered the art of saying, I don't know. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to do it better. If every Olympian has a coach, why? Because they need that to help them fill in their gaps and do things better. Why do we, as an average person, think that we don't need that kind of guidance, that we know all the answers? Michael Phelps, with all of his Olympic medals, had multiple coaches, multiple people to give him perspectives. Why do we think that we would just know it all? I mean, that's a little arrogant, isn't it?
It is, and it's an analogy that I make quite a lot, and I think a lot of people do. You know, if top performers have a coach, why can't you? But
Yeah.
how do we get people to understand that the people you've studied, that you've worked with, have they always been like that? Have they always asked the questions? Is it something
Yes.
that you either do naturally or that's built into you from a very young age? Your schooling leads you to that place. Is it possible to take someone who comes in? Look, when I was in my 20s and I started work, I was arrogant. I thought I had to prove myself, and that led to, me being perceived as arrogant. And I don't think I knew how to say I don't know. How do we create that space where people recognize I can trust you and you're telling me it's okay to ask and I should do it more, and you're not going to judge me adversely for doing so?
Andy, I think this is something that needs to be modeled at the very highest level. If a CEO or anyone in the C suite, or even your direct boss, can say, I don't know, or I'm not sure, or let me ask, or I wonder if they model that behavior, that becomes the norm. That becomes the culture of the organization. You can't just put a sign on the wall in the hallway that says, ask questions, be curious. Because if nobody's modeling that behavior, then those are just empty words. We need to have that modeled in such a way that it becomes inculcated into the culture of the organization. And if they see the president, the director, the vice president, the professor, whoever it is saying that and modeling that, that becomes okay then. That becomes okay to say, I don't know, because you're not saying, I don't know, and then putting your hands up and saying, I'm done. You're saying, I don't know, but let me find out. Let me connect with the right person in order to find out. Let me read up on it. Let me talk to somebody. Let me do a little bit of research and get back to you. Is there anyone you suggest I should talk to? Is there an article you suggest I should read? Is there a video you suggest I should watch? A podcast I should listen to? What do you think are the avenues or the platforms where I can really learn more about this? Who is our subject matter expert on this? Well, now you're not just saying, I don't know. Now you're showing that you have grit, that you want to figure this out. And this is going to be the bee in your bonnet, that you are going to figure it out. You're going to show your passion for this. You're going to show your ability to get the answers to unknown questions. This is where you actually get to shine. It's not a negative, it's actually a sign of strength, but you have to really position it as such and not just give up as soon as you don't know something.
Wonderful. Let that be a mantra to so many. The other thing I wanted to pick up on from your initial answer was this comment that we focus on the below average. And it made me remember my first client when my business formed in this current state. He sat down with me and he drew a 4-square matrix and he put 1, 2, 3, 4, and he said, these are, this is how I look at my team. And he pointed at the ones and he said, they don't need any help. And he pointed at the fours and he said, not worth my while investing in them. And he pointed at the twos and the threes. He said, that's who I want you to work with. And so it's a similar approach to the one that you've outlined. Now, some organisations do put on talent programs. I delivered a global talk for a big bank last week for their talents all over the world who are on their talent program. Is that done enough? And are the talents who go on those programs selected in the best way possible?
It's so interesting. I was early in my career, my master's degree is in business, and early in my career, I worked in finance. And I worked in one of the banks, and they put us through this program. There was 10 people in every region who were chosen for this special fast management track. And I remember going through all these tests and a handwriting analysis and meeting with a psychologist and background checks, all of this. And I'm not sure. I mean, I think it had certain people who rose to the top, right? They can only pick 10, but that is a very difficult way to find out who these high achievers are. It's basically throw everyone together and then start picking them apart. I think that's one way of doing it, but I think looking at the curiosity of the people who you have, right, you could have a lot of very talented people who don't do anything with their talent. Those are not the kind of people that you want. You want the really talented people who will constantly work to refine that. So you need to ask them, say, I see you're really good at this. What is something that you wish you could do even better? What are some of the things that we can do to help you with that? It's not necessarily about the money, giving them a salary bonus, which is, it's great if you can do it, but that's not really what high achievers want. They want to see that you are investing in them. So you can say to them, is there a course you wanted to take? Is there someone you wanted to meet with? Is there someone within the company who you think is a subject matter expert that you wish that you could learn from? Maybe we can set up some sort of meetings or shadowing or something with them. There's some companies that actually give people sabbatical money, right? If you work there for a certain amount of time and achieve certain things, there's money to learn something new. And that creates so much great loyalty to an organization as well. So it's rewarding that really good behavior. right? And that's what they want. They want to know that you are investing in them and helping them grow because they don't want to do the same thing sitting in the same chair for 20 years. They want to constantly reinvent themselves. So help them do that. And then you'll be able to hold on to that top talent.
And that's something I want to revisit, because I do want to explore this question that employers will come up with, that why am I going to invest in people who are then going to move on with that, and the days of a job for life, which certainly was the culture when I went into the workforce, have gone in a lot of industries. But let's come back to that, because there's something else that you said there that triggered a thought with me. So in a lot of the top talent programs that I've contributed to, I noticed that the participants on the program are moved around. So they'll spend, if it's a 2-year program, they'll probably do 4 rotations, 6-month
Yeah.
rotations in different parts of the business. One of the things you said is there something you want to do and you want to do more of and
Yes.
focus on? What's better for the individual and for the organization? Is it to give them that experience across the organization, or are you creating generalists when really you want to create specialists who are masters of their role?
I think you need to know the other divisions within an organization. So even if you don't want to specialize in it, no organization can just work and survive on just creating an empire out of their silo. They have to know how to work with other people. And what greater way than to actually understand their work and to actually be in their shoes? So even if you're not going to be working in that department in the future, knowing and understanding the pain points, the pressure points, the successes, the people of those other divisions will help you in the long run. And I agree, in my banking days, that's what we did. We had to rotate through the different departments and divisions before we understood what it is that we really like. Med schools do the same thing. In medical school, you rotate through most of the departments in order to understand, what does an internist do? What does a surgeon do? What does a pediatrician do? What does a psychiatrist do? Because you need to know enough about all of them to understand how they interact, and also to understand when you are out of your bandwidth, this is beyond your skill set, you do need help, and say, I don't know how to do this, but I know who that specialist is. I worked with them before. I know they're the best. They're so good. Let me call them up. And now you actually have a name. You've already established a relationship with that one person. So that is great if you can do it. Not all organizations are built to do that, but I think that's great if you can also rotate people, because another challenge is that if you're really good at what you do, your boss may not want you to move on because you're going to be really difficult to replace, really difficult. So sometimes, even subconsciously, they may do things that prevent you from moving on. So having this rotation is actually extremely helpful if your organization can be built for it.
So thinking back to young Ruth, the future banking professional, how good were you then at, when you were doing the rotations, at staying in touch with the people that you work with for, say, 6 months? Because I can see the temptation, particularly in younger people who don't really know yet the power of their building their networks. Well, I'm only here for 6 months and now I'm on to something else and it's a new shiny toy. How good were you back then, and what tips would you give to people in that place now?
So I left finance 25 years ago, and I'm still in touch with some of those people.
Yeah.
I'm in touch with the, especially those who were masters at their craft. And I am no longer in that industry, but we are still in touch. And in fact, I just saw one of them last week, right? Because you never know when there will be overlap again, but they have also become really, really good friends as well. And also, if you want to know, even though I am now in an education and leadership role in academic medicine, there is benefits to hearing how people from other industries do things. Because if we have our blinders on and only do things the way it's always been done within our industry, We are not open to understanding how people in other organizations and other industries do it. And we are really limiting ourselves if that's what we decide to do. So just getting that back and forth. I mean, how often do we talk, right? How are things done in the UK and I'm in the US? How are things as you as an entrepreneur versus me working in an organization? There's so many things that we can learn from each other. I learned the 24/7/30 rule from you,
That's right.
which
That's
by
right.
the way, I am citing in my upcoming book. I
Oh,
didn't tell you that yet.
fantastic! Fantastic. Well, I did see you shared it in a presentation recently, which was nice to see.
Yes, I share all the time.
And Bal Namre, who's a regular listener to these live streams and is in banking, said that's really interesting. I think Bal was talking about the rotation, and companies should follow this method in order for people to have a better understanding of skills,
Yeah.
which is absolutely important. It doesn't surprise me that you were good and you remain very strong at maintaining connections with people. I think it's really important for organisations to get across that message to those who don't understand it so naturally, because it doesn't come to everyone. I want to turn to another of your key areas of focus that we've touched on. I mentioned at the top of the show, and you've effectively touched on it in a couple of things you've said, and that's mentoring top talent.
Yeah.
How often do you see mentoring included as part of a formal a talent program? I guess the question is really, do you see it included often enough, and do you see it included in a way that works to its maximum potential? And if not, where are organisations going wrong?
So, Andy, I think the key question is, do people do it or do they do it well? I think every organization will say, we have mentoring, but how often is it done well? Not so often, because people are very adamant about assigning mentors. And I have yet to see where that works exceptionally well, because people assign mentors based on something really random. We're both from the United States. We both work in education. We both went to such and such college. Well, you know that not all people from the United States are the same. Not all people who went to the same college are the same. Not all people who have curly hair are the same. So to assign yourself to somebody based on these random facts is crazy. And then what happens if it doesn't work out? What's the out? Especially if that person is really senior and influential. And very often, then you're stuck with a person who you really don't connect with and you don't have chemistry with, and they're too busy when there could be someone much better for you. So, I think what organizations can do is you can have, instead of assigning mentors, right? Because if it doesn't work out, it can be disastrous. Instead of assigning mentors, you can create a first point of contact, knowing that you both have an out. This is not your mentor. This is just a first point of contact for you to figure out the lay of the land, if you will. But then the organization has to create opportunities for people to meet each other organically, because the best mentorship relationships are organically grown. You meet someone, you connect with them, you have some sort of chemistry with them. It's just, otherwise, if you're assigning people, it's sort of an arranged marriage, right? But when you are able to organically meet someone, you are going to know if you connect with them. There's going to be some sort of common thread that is important to both of you, more than just where you went to school or where you grew up or where you're from. And I think if you can find that and have multiple mentors from different industries, that would be great. I think the other thing that if organizations want to do this well is to focus less on one mentor, because nobody's perfect, right? We need groups of people. And I think having mentoring circles will really help with that, and allowing people to join multiple mentoring circles. So one of the things that I do here at Weill Cornell is we have a mentoring circle for women. We have a mentoring circle for junior faculty. We have a mentoring circle for mid-career. We have a mentoring circle for senior. We're going to have another one for leadership, because the issues of concern for people in those groups are very different, and we can dive in deeper. They're allowed to be more vulnerable. They're allowed to ask questions where they may not be comfortable asking that in a larger audience. And then, because they're smaller groups, They get to know each other at a very different level. And one of the things that we encourage everyone to do is not just have one mentor, but have a team of mentors. So now you're going to see who you connect with on a deeply personal level. And you say, I know this person, I like this person, I trust this person. If you have those three things, those are the type of person who can actually be your mentor. But don't ever ask them to be your mentor. That is the kiss of death because you are asking them to take on another obligation. And I don't know about you, Andy, but I'm really busy and I don't have time for any more obligations. But if you're asking someone for their perspective, their thoughts, their idea, that's different. That they're willing to do, that they will always have time for. So you do that based on the people who you know, like, and trust, and put yourself in these situations where you can organically meet people. And if you're in a position where you can create these circles, do that. And that doesn't have to come from the C suite. Anyone can create a mentoring circle, and you can bring in guest speakers if you want as well. That might be helpful.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting you mentioned that. One of the things that I talk a lot about is mastermind groups, which are very similar. They're peer. They tend to be peer group or peer
Mm-hmm.
level, and they're structured around finding solutions to challenges. Have been incredibly powerful for me. In fact, I had a mastermind session on the Friday just gone that really opened my eyes as to the next steps on a plan I've got for a project for the business. So
Mm,
that type of mastermind approach or mentoring circle is important. And if anyone, by the way, wants to know more about mastermind groups, just reach out to me, and I have a tips book that helps you see how to set one up. So I'll be happy to send you a PDF of that, or physical copies are available on my website. The one thing I might take issue with, if that's okay, Ruth, or
please.
question, and that is, don't ask someone to be your mentor. I understand why you're saying that, and you do increase the chances of being turned down. I would argue that asking someone to be your mentor allows you to put the relationship on a much more formal setting. And if you put it on that more formal footing, what happens is that they're more likely to hold you accountable, to challenge you, and to create a momentum of advice. But there's a chance they turn you down. And I've been turned down. But what's happened is, having been turned down, I've then been able to go to that informal relationship where every now and then I can turn around and say, can I have your opinion on this? For that to work, you probably want to build the relationship first. And what I really like is getting to know people and see how they operate through the mentoring circles. Build the one-to-one relationship with a few
Yeah.
more informal questions, and then suggest the formal mentoring relationship with a caveat that it's okay to say no and that you won't be offended. Give people the exit that they would feel uncomfortable without, and then it's okay to ask.
So, Andy, I think you're bringing up a great point. The one thing that's important to realize is that most people are never trained on how to be a mentor. They are not trained on the appropriate listening skills, the different adult learning styles, the different mentoring styles, the different probing techniques that you have. All of their experiences just from what their own lived experience. What happens in the worst case scenario? I'd rather be turned down because the opposite what happens is that people will say, yes, I'll do it. And then nothing happens. And you are now really frustrated. And then you get upset. And then you get mad. And nothing happens. You are expecting something that just doesn't come to fruition. I always say you are not a mentor until your mentee calls you one. So I encourage people to develop that relationship, ask for advice, perspective, ideas. And when you feel that they have earned the title of mentor, you can say, Andy, I really appreciate our mentoring relationship. I really do see you as a mentor. And that's after the mentor has actually proven themselves. And flip side of that, the mentee has to prove that they are worth it as well by putting in the work. So it really is a two-way street. And that's why I said, don't forget about titles. Forget about titles. That can come later. See if you know, like, trust, and can work with each other.
I think that's great advice. We need to explore mentoring deeper on a, as I said at the beginning, on a podcast purely focused on that. Because there's a couple other questions I want to ask you, not about mentoring. I should say, if you go back into the archives, I think it's one of the earliest podcast interviews, alongside an interview with Ruth, is an interview with Kerry Dorman and Vanessa Vallely on mentoring, both of who now I think have done things with Ruth. So
that's my 11 o'clock call.
That's
Andy.
your 11 o'clock call.
For
Is
a
it Kerry?
presentation tomorrow.
Oh, well, there we go. Well, if you're a little bit late,
talk with them tomorrow.
if you're a little bit late, you can blame me. That's absolutely fine.
And we met through you.
You met through me.
Through you. That was the relationship.
Yeah. Absolutely. So check back on those, both the original interview with Ruth and that one on mentoring. But I think we're going to revisit this subject anyway. Shin Tan has said, I agree that you should build the relationship first. Shin's watching on LinkedIn, and Bal's come back and said, totally agree. Now that could be replying to Shin, could be saying it to me or to you, I don't know. But we will get into that. So I just want to shine the spotlight on one more thing before we move on. That something that you said, and I guess I can just shine the spotlight and we'll move on rather than phrase it as a question. But I don't want to let it go. You talked about getting ideas from other sectors, other communities, other countries, and I was working with the leadership team of an Asian global organisation, but their Asian leadership team, on setting up their mentoring program. And one of the ideas I put to them was, well, rather than just look at mentoring within the organisation, why don't you look at a mentoring alliance with 2 or 3 organisations in different fields? And you create mentoring relationships between those people in those organisations and yours. It gets away from the fear of judgment people have when they're being mentored by senior people in their own organisation. And it increases that diversity of learning and new, fresh ideas that you talked about as well. Bal and Shin are having a great conversation on LinkedIn. We can go and have a look at that later on. But I have a couple more questions for you, and you have a call in 10 minutes with 2 of my good friends. So going back to this topic, the core topic of top talents, how do you deal with the people that you think are going to be top talents? You've identified them, you've brought them into the program, but they're not living up to their potential.
So I would just say, we brought you in here because we believe that you have this potential. And with the people that we have here, with the resources that we have here, with the things we're doing here, we feel that you can go up to the next level. How do you feel about that? Do you feel that's something you can do? Do you feel that's something you're interested in doing? Throw the ball back into their court. And you may hear some very interesting information. And then you could say, all right, we feel you can do this. You feel you can do this. What's it going to take to get you there? Right? It's not a blame game. It's what is missing. What can we do? What can we work together in order to get you to that level? And you might hear some very interesting things, because I have a feeling that the employee is going to know exactly what it is that they need.
It's all about having the conversation, isn't it? And you talked about the blame game. I think perhaps one of the things that's lacking in lacking in mediocre leadership, I should say, is the ability to actually have the conversation and find out what people are really thinking or feeling, rather than what you see. And actually, the other side of the equation is that people understand that what they think they're doing is not how they're perceived.
Yes,
and we've got to manage both sides of it. And finally, I want to keep my promise that we would come back to this topic, and that's the retention of top talent. You know, the biggest obstacle, I think, to companies investing in top talent is their fear that people will move away. And we're moving into an era of employment where people are spending less time at one company, and they're expecting to move between businesses, move between sectors. Obviously, that depends on the sector you're in, but it's definitely changed from when I came into the workforce years ago. So what do you say to those CEOs who say, well, do I really want to invest in people if they're going to leave as soon as they finish their training.
Don't you want to invest in the top people so that they stay as opposed to the mediocre people? I mean, do you really want to stay with the mediocre people? I think the high achievers, obviously you have to pay them competitively, but it's more than that for them. It's being able to be creative and curious and have a goal and have what they need to reach that goal and know that the company wants to help them get there. That has to be very clear. And if they're able to do that, you will get a lot of loyalty out of them because they're going to see what the next step is. They're going to know what they need to get there. You will also introduce other opportunities that might not be on their radar. You will maybe tell them about, do you want to go for this courses? Do you want to go for this certificate? Do you want to go for this training? Do you want to go to this conference? Show that you believe in them and you will get that loyalty. And obviously pay them competitively.
and I completely agree. I mean, the first thing I say is always the same thing. Give them a reason to stay. And we need to accept that they may well move on. But when they move on, what are they going to say about your organisation to other people you might want to attract? So they become your brand advocates as well. We have a number of comments just to finish off with. So Bala said that it takes courage to do it and we must brush away the nervousness. Absolutely. And I think that goes with many of the themes that we talk about on the Connected Leadership podcast. And Bala's also completely agreed with what you've just said. Pramal Lad on LinkedIn has said alignment of personal motivations to the company goals is important. And I think that comes back to conversation as well, Pramal. Are you talking about what they're trying to achieve, where they want to go? Are you just saying, this is our top talent, let's bring them on, without understanding where they want to go in their career and what they want to achieve?
Exactly. And I will also say, Andy, high achievers surround themselves with other high achievers. So if you want a recruitment model, you want them to recruit their friends to work there as well when they stay there or even after they go, because they know the top people. Why do you think half the Nobel laureates were trained by other Nobel laureates? People like to surround themselves with those kinds of people, and they know each other well.
And that comes down to the very theme of this series. So Shin and Bal, I can see you're still commenting. Please keep that up. We will revisit you on LinkedIn. Ruth will come in there after her call with Kerry and Vanessa. She'll come in and join the conversation. So do keep that going. Ruth, we're going to do this every couple of months, and I'm really looking forward to it. I hope everyone else is. I think you bring great value and great insight, and I'm looking forward to some more discussions and debates with you. So thank you very much for joining me.
Love the intellectual discourse. Thank you.
And thank you, everyone, for your comments and for joining us. Keep your eyes open. I always say this. I always do this. And I'm quickly opening my calendar because I have an interview at 10 a.m. UK time on Friday morning. So watch out for another edition of the Connected Leadership podcast there. That's 10 a.m. UK time on Friday morning, if the technology allows me to do so. I will get that up on Thursday so you'll know what to look forward to. Thank you, Pramal. Thank you, Bao. Thank you, Shin, for your comments. Keep that going, and I will see you again very soon on the Connected Leadership podcast.